Hello again. Would like to talk about Diablo 3 today. Just wanted to run through the game for people who haven't really played it, don't understand what it is or what they're doing. You might have a friend that wants you to play, and maybe this video will get you into the experience a little more than you would otherwise be. You know, look a little more experienced as a new player than most people would. So you come in, you see this. You're obviously going to press any button. The first thing you're going to do is create a character. Before we even get into that though, I recommend coming down into options in gameplay and turning elective mode on. That's going to allow you eventually to put any powers onto any button instead of having them bundled into neat little packages. It gives you a lot more freedom when you're playing the game. So anyway, go into options, gameplay, turn elective mode on. You should have the option to create a character. I don't because I've already done that. So I'll hit triangle for switch hero. And as you can see, I've already got a bunch of characters. I want to make a new one to show you what the beginning of the game will actually look like. So we will click triangle for create a hero. I will start with the Crusader. And this would be my recommendation. Sure, we'll go with what they have. Starting with a Crusader is what I recommend. It doesn't matter if they're male or female. Probably should have talked about that. You'll have 6 different options, and each one is male or female. You have barbarians, monks, witch doctors, crusaders, demon hunters, and wizards. The reason I recommend going with a Crusader to begin with is because they are like tanks, so it's going to be much harder for you to die in the beginning. But if you're not playing on hardcore, it shouldn't matter too much. If you look at something and like something better than a Crusader, go with that. You should be fine. If you are going into hardcore though, definitely play with a Crusader. So you can go into game settings and mess with that if you want to. You can hit R1 or L1 to switch these menus back and forth. Select your difficulty. Obviously you want to start on normal. You'll probably find in this game, it's truer than most other games, you'll be able to increase the difficulty once you start to acquire gear, once your character levels and you get a feel for what their powers are and how to avoid taking damage, that sort of thing. I think it forces you to start in campaign. Once you beat the campaign, you can jump into adventure mode, which would be below at any time. Adventure mode is essentially campaign. You can freely pick chapter select. They also have bounties that you can complete and these massive dungeons where you can get some bonus gear. But for the sake of the video, in the beginning at least, we'll start on campaign in Act 1 on normal difficulty. And so we start in. And what Diablo is, you're looking at a top-down dungeon crawl loot game. I'll skip the cutscenes so that I'm not ruining any of the experience. But there's your character. You can move them around with the left stick. The map is on the bottom right, obviously. You can see the character moving around. And the red bar on the bottom left is your health. The one underneath it, which you'll start to see fill up as I attack creatures, that's a level bar. As you kill more and more things, complete more and more quests, you're going to level your character. You'll gain additional powers, be able to equip better gear, that sort of thing. But the only attack I have, which it says on the bottom left there which attacks I have X. It's the only thing I can attack with at this point, which is that attack you're seeing on screen. L1 would be to fill my health if I was damaged by an enemy, and that globe that's glowing down there is the magic power, which I can't use yet. The game will prompt you a lot to talk to people, just talk to them to move the quest line forward. like I said, the Crusader is kind of a tank. I don't have to worry about taking damage, especially not in the beginning of the game. So, leveled up, and it's going to tell me I've unlocked some things. You can see down on the bottom left that I unlocked what it's showing there, which is the shield bash. I just have to hit the R2 button to use that. So instead of just having this, I now have that as well. If I were to click the big button in the middle of the controller, it takes me into the character menu. And the two areas we're going to worry about here at any given time is skills, and then if you hit L1 you can come over to inventory. As you fight enemies, they will drop gear, you'll pick up different things. So right now all I have is a shield and a weapon. But this will fill up pretty fast in the normal course of the game. And then over here are the powers, which the numbers you're seeing are the level requirements to unlock. So once I hit level 10, I'll unlock this thing down here. And when I hit level 4, I'll unlock the square attack. And the nice thing is that since we have passive mode enabled, I can set these to any button that I want. So if I want the X attack to be on R2, I can set it there. Normally, let me switch back. Without passive enabled, I can only use these 5 things for that button. But enabling passive gives you complete control. Anyway, let's walk into town. So these are the primary hubs of the world that you're going to encounter. And there's not a whole lot here in the beginning of the game. What you start off seeing is this person with the heart. They'll heal you. You're almost never going to bother with talking to this individual because your health will be regenerating pretty fast in the normal course of the game. And then you have a stash where if you wanted to store any items that you've picked up, you could do that. They would appear in the inventory part in the middle, and then whatever you've put into the stash appears on the right where it says stash. If you wanted to take items out, you just go and click X, put them back. Very simple stuff. The glowing on the map is always showing you what your next piece of the quest is, where you're going, what you're doing. Let's see. If you look for the little coin bag, that's a merchant. Merchants allow you to, if you wanted to buy items that you don't necessarily have, say you've been playing for 30 minutes or so, and you still don't have a piece of armor for your chest, you could go in here and purchase that item from him. The beginning of the game is about the only time you're going to purchase anything from one of these individuals. Most of the time you're going to come in here and sell items that you don't want. You'll have 2 options with things that you pick up. You can use them, obviously. You can sell them for gold, or you can break them down at a blacksmith to get materials to build other items, better items. And I can't go over there right now because I haven't used any of my equipment really. But the repair option here is something you'll use a lot. As you fight enemies, as you take damage, die, all of your items, they begin to degrade, and you'll need to come in here and repair them from time to time just to make sure you're doing the maximum amount of damage when you fight. So little money bags people are the merchants. The anvil over here is your blacksmith, and again you can make weapons and armor. Salvage, this is where this is the sell function of the blacksmith essentially. What you're going to be doing here is breaking down items for materials so that you can make the items you're seeing over here. And he also has a repair option. If you choose to at some point, you can train them. They start out at level 1, go to level 12. It's pretty straightforward. You spend some money, you train your blacksmith. They can make better and better gear for you. Let's see. There's a mailbox. Other people on your friends list who play, they might find items for you. They'll send them to you. You can also hit triangle to create mail, send something to one of your friends if you want to. We'll discuss a little more of that later on. But I am going to back out of this and load in with a normal character so you can see all that the towns normally look like once they're opened up. But this is the beginning of the game. It starts out fairly simple. Let's see. I'm going to play with my witch doctor because it's overpowered. I'll be in adventure mode, so I'm not following the storyline. I can roam freely and do whatever I want to do. The game saves automatically, so quit out, load back in at will. Switch characters. If you pick something up on a character and you want to move it to one of your other characters, just put it in your stash, and when you load in with the other character, you'll be able to pick it up. Let me see. These little blue waypoints you'll see in the beginning, or you'll see all of the time. If you go and click X on them, they open up the world that you're currently in, or the act that you're currently in. If you want to visit different areas, you can. So these are just different chapters of the story, and we'll go back to one so that you are somewhat familiar. The person following me around is someone who eventually you can equip a follower and they help you in battle, that sort of thing. And that's another thing. When you pick up gear and you're playing by yourself, be sure you come over here to your follower and just check to make sure none of these items that they're carrying are better or worse than what they have on. Generally, these green arrows are pretty good indicators of whether or not an item is better than what they have equipped. So the equipped item is on the right, and everything else you've picked up is in the center. And the only reason that I'm not putting these other items on them is because since these are legendaries, most of them have a particular perk on them, and the one I'm looking for is your follower cannot die. So the one that they have equipped is the one where she won't die, and that's exactly what I want. If I wanted to see the other items, I could hit square, and then up and down on the D-pad switches from item to item. So obviously these have different perks, and this one right here would probably be ideal, but I don't want to equip it because it would allow my follower to die, and that's not what I want. So some other things, we've been over inventory and skills. This Paragon section, once you hit level 70, which is the max normal level in the game, you'll begin to level Paragon, which is just a secondary leveling system. The levels go a lot faster, and they give you points that you can put into all these different categories to make your character even more powerful beyond level 70. So that's pretty helpful. To talk a little more about the powers, the top half of this circle are all powers, and the bottom half are skills. So these are things you can actively push buttons to use, and the things on the bottom are things you slowly unlock as you play the game that just help you become more powerful, and you can read through them at will and make it suit your needs. Obviously what I'm playing with is not what everyone else is going to be playing with. Once you beat the story, you can go and find this cube in a particular area, and what that does is it allows you to break down the better items in the game, the ones that have those legendary perks I was talking about, and you can equip 3 on your character. That helps. So if you want a weapon perk, but the weapon itself isn't very good, you have a better weapon, you just want that perk, you can break it down in the cube and equip it and still run the weapon that you want to run. And if I go into the cube, you're going to hit X to extract a legendary power, and this is getting pretty into the game, more so than I would like at this point, but just know that you can eventually break down legendary gear, and you can come over here and equip the powers that you collected by breaking them down. So obviously this waypoint allows you to move from area to area. If there was a friend playing with you, your follower would go away and you'd see another flag here at the front. This is my flag. You'll be able to create your own. It allows friends to move from place to place to join each other. So if I'm playing with someone else and they go to an area without me, which they can do at will, they can go and play any piece of the game that they want to without me. Say I want to join them, I just walk up to the flag, hit X, and I can join into their character in almost all instances. Should talk about gear a little more. You'll notice pretty quick that the things that you pick up are color coded, the background colors. Obviously when you were seeing it earlier, all you saw were gray. Eventually they become yellow and blue, and there's some other colors in there, but eventually you'll begin to acquire legendary gear. The backgrounds are orange or they're green, and the only real difference between these two, the green are set pieces. So that carving knife, that green item, it's part of a set. And if I were to look around, obviously I'm filling other pieces of the set. If I go down to read about it, the more items I have equipped from that set, the more powers I get. And that's why you might want to run the sets. A lot of the legendary weapons and such that you can run on their own, they'll have better legendary perks, those orange perks that you're seeing, and that's why you might choose to run those instead. But know that eventually you'll pick up legendary gear, and that's what you're looking for. Even if it's less powerful than something else you might have, hang on to it, don't destroy it, because in the end, once you beat the game, you might want to extract a legendary power, even though you don't like that item necessarily. So I want to talk a little more about the people you can visit and the things you can do. We talked already about merchants, and obviously you can buy. Repairing items is very simple. You come over here and you hit triangle to repair all your items, and X, and you're done. And you can still buy and sell items. My guinea pig is losing her mind. I apologize. So again, there's a salvage option here. I don't want to salvage anything that I have on me because they're all legendary. But say if you're out battling things, you're still going to pick up normal gear. Even once you have all legendary gear, your character is exactly the way you want it. Say, like me, you end up having a lot of money at some point. You don't want to sell them. It takes up a lot of time, and you don't need the money. But you might need the materials from salvaging those items. You can come over here and destroy them one by one, or you can hit triangle and you'll have the option to destroy everything except for your legendary items. So coming to salvage, hitting triangle, getting rid of all those other items really fast is a good idea later in the game. If you come here, you can also repair. So primarily in the beginning, you're going to, or towards the end of the game, you're going to visit the blacksmith a lot. Another person you'll become familiar with really fast is the jeweler. So we've talked about the fact that you get skills in the game, you get weapons and armor in the game, but you also pick up jewels, and I have a gift to send. Sorry. You'll pick up jewels, and as you play more and more, the jewels you pick up get better and better. And these, you can see that in a lot of these items I've equipped jewels. They help your items become more powerful, and jewels do different things for different types of characters. So on the right there, it's actually telling you exactly what it does. If I were to put a diamond into a weapon, it's going to increase my damage to elite enemies, the higher end enemies. If I put it in the helmet, it reduces the cooldown of my magic. So those are jewels. And the reason you will deal with the jeweler is because you can create jewels. You can create more powerful jewels than what you already have. You can come here to put jewels into items, but you could do that yourself, and I'll show you that later. But primarily why you're going to come here is to remove jewels from items. Say you put a jewel in an item, and then you got a more powerful jewel that you want to put into something, or you just want to swap the jewels for some reason. You could come to this guy and destroy it, and you would get your jewels back, but you don't want to destroy that item. You want to keep that item. That's why you come here and remove the jewel, because then you didn't destroy the item and you can put a new jewel into it. If you're just looking to get rid of the items and keep the jewels, just go and salvage the items with this guy. But that's the jeweler. And towards the end of the game, you're going to unlock the artisan. What she does is she allows you to change perks on your items and change the look of your items. So the way my character looks right now, almost none of that stuff matches the actual item that I have in hand. So the carving knife, my primary weapon, doesn't look anything like that gold staff in my hand. But I can come here and you have enchant, which this just allows you to change a particular perk on the item. So I've already changed most of this, but all of those items in blue that you see, in the beginning, I could decide I wanted to change any of those. And you just go in and roll for it, basically. Since I've already changed, you can only change one perk per item, and since I've already done that, it's not going to allow me to change anything else. And you can come in and continually roll and roll and roll to try to get something else. So I'll show you. So I rolled for different properties. Now, I could decide to not have 71% critical hit damage. I could instead decide to have a socket where I could put a jewel on this item, or I could increase my life by 16%. I'm going to stick with the critical hit damage because it's important to me. But know that you could come in and you'll get 3 options anytime you roll an item, and one of the options will always be the perk that you had to begin with. So no matter how many times I sit here and roll this, I'm going to get that 71 critical hit. If you wanted to see what your options were going to be when you rolled something, hit square, and it shows you on the right exactly what the range of different things you could get are. So what the perks might be whenever you roll this item. But that's enchanting. You're probably more worried about transmogrifying items, which this is where you change the actual look. As you pick up different items in the game, different legendaries, and some normal items, you'll acquire these transmogrifications. You can see on the left side that it's changing the look of things. Basically, you come in here and you pick what you want the item to look like, hit X and you're done. And you can do this for your entire set of weapons and armor. And the thing you'll notice pretty quick if you come in here and do this is you'll almost certainly have mismatched gear as far as color goes. You might get the look you want, but you don't have the color you need. So you can buy dyes. I think, yeah, my character's pretty mismatched at this point. So we'll try and match it. In every town you go to, one of these merchants is going to be, look for the little money bags, people. Someone is going to be selling a dye, and it will be down here where this bag is. This person isn't selling anything, so I know it's not this individual. So we'll look for the other money bag people here. And it's this merchant. So you come here, and it's under this items section. And here are the dyes. And you can buy any of them you want to. Buy a lot, because you'll want to use a lot of them if you're trying to get the same gear color. You'll also notice that the dyes that they have are randomized, so when you go from place to place you might see different dyes. So if you get a lot of gold, go ahead and back up the coloring just so you can change the look, the color of your items at will. I'll just go ahead and buy a handful of these. And know at the outset that there are 2 other types of dyes. One that removes all color from it and takes it back to the normal color. And it may be this purity dye, but there's there's another type of die you can buy that actually makes it look like you have no armor on. You can't do that at the transmogrification person with the artisan. You'd have to buy the die that makes it look like you're wearing no clothes. If you wanted to run around looking naked while you were playing the game for some reason, you can do that. But so I want to dye my items. I just go into my menu again, go over to my character, and look for the area, the same little place that I bought the dyes is where they should appear on my character. And I've got a bunch of stuff here, but I just hit the X button and it's going to give me options for all of my equipment. You can see the little black dye thing on most of these, so I guess maybe my items are matching, but we'll go ahead and change the look. So that changed my helmet. And you'll slowly just see the colors on all of my items changing. Pretty straightforward, but a neat feature of the game. Don't think I missed anything, but yeah, okay, it's these pants I have on, they're colored oddly. Okay. Another thing is these wings I have on aren't something you're probably going to see in the game. And I'll go ahead and take them off so that we can see better when we're in the menus. Let's see here. I talked about mail, and I'd like to show you a trick before we get into anything else. Say you have a friend playing with you, you've reached max level, and you have a friend come and play with you. It's going to level them pretty fast, and you might have gear that you want to send that friend. The problem is when you normally send gear, you lose it. So say I wanted to send something to a friend, but I didn't want to lose the item. You can do that, and I'll show you how. If you just go to click create mail, and we'll find a friend, and I don't have much on me, but say I want to send them this potion, but I don't want to lose it. I click X. It has to be one item. Don't put more than one item over there if you're trying not to lose it. You're essentially going to make a copy of it. It sends the copy to them and you keep it, whereas normally you would lose it. And I expect sometime in the near future they're going to patch this out of the game, but for now you can do it. So we have one item over there. It can only be one. We want to hit triangle to send. So we haven't actually sent the item yet. It's asking us if we want to verify. The trick here is to hit X and options at the exact same time. It'll pull up the pause menu and you'll be staring at your character on the large screen. That's how you'll know that it worked. So I sent that item, but it should still be in my inventory, and it is. And you can do that with all of your gear. So that's actually how I have this character. It's just a friend sent me a bunch of items after they played online with some people who copied their items to them. That's why I'm playing with this character primarily. It's not exactly my favorite character, but it's helping me build more powerful characters on my own. Speaking of leveling, if you want to level really fast, and assuming you're new to the game and someone's asking you to play with them, you're almost certainly going to level fast. If they're already a level 70, they can level you extremely fast. The trick is, and I talked about this earlier, once you beat the game and you're playing in adventure mode, you can join someone in adventure mode without having beat the game. That's not a problem. You just have to go join them. Worst comes to worst, they have to lower their difficulty for you to join. Okay, just have them do that and then you join them. But there are two things you can do outside of the normal gameplay. You can obviously come here and run bounties. Bounties are all the little things with the exclamation points on them. And if you do all 5 in a particular area, then you'll get a set of bonus items from this guy. But if you look on the map for the thing that has the chest above it, which would be right here, if you did all of those bounties, then you're going to get 2 caches at the end. So you get 2 sets of items just as gifts instead of just 1. Anyway, leveling. What you open up at the end are these rifts. These are basically giant dungeons where you have to kill a certain percentage of enemies. If a friend wants to level you really fast, have them load into a rift and you join them. That's all you have to do. You have to sit at the beginning of the area that they're in and you will level extremely fast. Normally by the time they've completed 1, maybe 2 rifts, you're already at level 70, assuming they're level 70. Speaking of rifts, this is where you come to play the rifts. This is the person you talk to when you're done with the rifts to get the additional experience and gold. And when you're over level 70 and you begin to play these rifts, you'll get another type of currency. They're called blood shards. And down at the bottom left, my gold is on the left. It's on the far bottom left. But right next to it, where you see that 695 out of 1200, those are my blood shards. And that's just a different type of currency. And the only place you can spend it is always going to be near these obelisks and this merchant. This merchant Kadala will follow Oric everywhere, and she's where you spend your blood shards. And essentially what it is you get to pick any type of item. So say all of my gear is legendary except for my amulets, or even I just want to try for a better amulet, I could go here and buy these amulets. And eventually you'll get a legendary. It's pure luck. The very first item I rolled was a legendary. But you can do that. Now I got a bunch of items there I didn't want. These yellow items and the blue item down at the bottom. Like I said before, I could get rid of these one at a time, or I can just hit triangle to mass salvage them, which is what I want to do. It will not get rid of these orange items or these green items. So it will not destroy your legendaries. Just hit triangle and then X. And they're all gone. But I got the materials I might need to make better items. So another thing worth knowing is if you're out playing the game and you're picking up a bunch of legendaries, legendary weapons or armor, whatever it is, you'll notice really fast that when you pick them up, they're not automatically identified. You can't tell what they are. You have to come in and hit triangle on them, and not triangle, square. You have to hit square on them to identify them. But if you've picked up a lot of them, coming in and doing this one at a time, it's a pain. You'll always find this book at every area you go to, and if you click on this book, it identifies all of your legendaries at once. So if you've been playing the game for a little while, you're probably wondering what the hell this book is, and that's what it is. It just identifies all of your legendary items at once. And so now you could go in and scroll around and look at your new legendary items. My favorite way to look at the legendary items is not to come in and scroll around this wheel. I don't like that wheel. I'll come over to the salvage area and just scroll through the list. It's much simpler, in my opinion anyway. What the list shows me are any legendary items that I don't have equipped. Once I've mass salvaged everything, this is just showing me legendary items that I don't have equipped. I can hit triangle still and see exactly what the item is, what the legendary perks on them are. Very helpful. So there's that. Let's see. Playing through the story is pretty straightforward. You'll go from place to place, look for the little blinking yellowish orange indicators to tell you where you're going next. That really doesn't need talked about. 2 things I wanted to tell you about were how to run bounties, how to play rifts, and I guess I should show you where this cube actually is. And you'll forgive me, my memory is failing me right about now. I think you come up to the ruins of Secheron in Act 3. So go to the world, go to Act 3, look for the ruins of Sescheron, and just hit X to load into it. Now this is going to be telling me to do a certain thing because this area has a bounty on it. I can do that certain thing, but what we're really going to be looking for is the cube. And if you just run around this area enough, you will eventually locate that cube. It's hidden pretty well, so make sure you are looking at every nook and cranny on the map, and you should find it. Now, speaking of the map, since I'm way advanced of where I should be at this point, if you hit down on the D-pad, you'll bring up the map in a major way, so you can see it full screen. Obviously the areas you've walked past are filled in on the map, and the areas you haven't walked past are not. This changes every time you load out and back into the map. It's going to be like this. If you're playing with a friend, it'll be somewhere between the black and the filled in. You'll know that your friend has been there, but you haven't. It will be pretty obvious. If a legendary item drops on the map, it will be an orange star. So before you leave an area, it's always a good idea to hit down on the D-pad, look over the map, and make sure that you don't have a legendary item on the ground. You can see waypoint indicators. This lets me know that I need to go up and to the right some, so that it's northeast of where I am. That's where I'm trying to get for this bounty. The bounty is on the right. It's telling me exactly what I need to do. I need to kill 50 enemies, and then I need to slay the primary enemy, which is what's blinking up there. If I wanted to go back to town with ease, you push right on the D-pad, and no matter where you are, you just begin to teleport yourself back to town. So I'm back, obviously, and I can go here to go back to the very beginning of that area, or if I wanted to go back to exactly where I was, I would go to this blue bubble. And that just takes me right back to where I transported from. If I was playing with a friend and they'd made some progress, I probably don't want to go through my bubble. I want to go to their flag, hit X, and join them. But we'll go back to where we started from. And know that the cube is somewhere in here. You will eventually find it if you just run around the ruins of Sescheron for long enough. So items are dropping on the ground as you're killing enemies. You're going to see all sorts of things on the map. If you ever see these little yellow pools, they give you bonuses generally for increased experiences. If they're those pools, you'll see little things drop on the ground. These are health globes. Those little red things that are dropping off the enemies are health globes. You're seeing a lot of advanced magic. The screen is normally not this full, but I've got a lot of things running with me. So there's a health globe here, and these little globes provide bonuses. So pick up the globes when they fall on the ground as often as you can. Pick up your materials. Anything that falls on the ground in the beginning of the game, it's a good idea to pick everything up. Later on in the game, you might just look for legendary items and not worry about picking much of anything else up. Let's go ahead and complete this bounty. I'll give you an idea of what that's like. And I'm going to run through, since we've already killed the 50. Some areas are a little more difficult to navigate than others. Once you're pretty powerful, you can simply watch the minimap and be good to go. That thing that's on the map there was a treasure goblin. That was a gold treasure goblin, so it's obviously dropping a bunch of gold. You'll see different types of treasure goblins. There are ones that drop specific items. There are ones that split into many different smaller goblins. There are ones that drop just gems. So if you ever see a treasure goblin, you want to kill it and focus primarily on that, no matter what else you're doing. killing treasure goblins is very helpful to your progress in the game. And like I said, I'm sorry if it's hard to tell what's going on. Basically, I'm spamming all of my attacks. My R2 is spitting this stuff on the ground. I've got a zombie wall that comes up and kills things. Throwing frogs all over the ground. Anyway, we completed the quest. We killed that enemy. I wasn't even paying attention. Something else you might find... What are they? Treasure chests on the map in places. Open those. You might get better items out of it than what you have equipped. You might get legendaries later in the game, so make sure you're opening those. Basically, anything you can interact with, you want to do. Something worth noting is that the base movement speed in the game is pretty slow. And when you're running through these dungeons, you'll notice that you can destroy items. Like a handful of things you'll be able to destroy. And if you can destroy, I think it's 7 or more items in pretty quick succession, you'll get a boost to your movement speed. That can be helpful. Anyway. So I'm going to check the map for any legendaries. I didn't drop any legendary items. When you're teleporting back to town, if something hurts you, normally it's going to stop the teleport. And if you die, which I'll show you momentarily, you'll be given the option to resurrect at your corpse, resurrect at the nearest checkpoint, or resurrect back in town. Any of those options can be helpful to you depending on the situation. So if all of your gear is broken and you can barely survive 2 seconds, you're obviously not going to be able to teleport back to town. So you can resurrect back in town, repair your items, and maybe have a shot at finishing what it was you were doing to begin with. But normally, you would come in and run these 5 bounties, and then you would talk to this guy, and he would give you bonus gifts, which you'd come down here, and it'd be up here where your treasures are. Click on it, and it would spill all this stuff on the ground that you could pick up. And generally, you're going to get 1 or 2 legendaries out of those packages if you're playing on a higher difficulty. Speaking of difficulty, Torment 10 is the highest difficulty you can get to in the game. You're obviously not starting there. There are 14 difficulties, if I'm counting correctly. It's a good idea while you're playing the game as you get better and better to keep increasing the difficulty. And the reason I say that is because you can see it over there. You can only go up or down a single difficulty while you're in a particular game. So since I'm playing on Torment 10, I could only go down to Torment 9. But if I did that, as you can see underneath where all the text is on the left side, I get less gold and I get less XP if I'm playing on the lower difficulty. So keep increasing the difficulty if you can survive. If you're playing on normal, dying doesn't really hurt you much. It might destroy your gear slowly, but even if your gear breaks and you end up playing through a dungeon and you look completely naked, you can come to a merchant and repair everything, and suddenly your gear is back. It might have been broken, but repairing it actually repairs it. You can put it back on your character. So that would take care of that. Forgot what I was talking about. I should mention that when it comes to skills, so this is obviously slotted to X. So whenever I push X, I'm spamming toads all over the ground. So you select that by picking one of these up top. But when you select it, as you play through the game, you're going to unlock these runes at the bottom. These make your X attack more powerful in different ways. So this one in particular, it mutates the frogs so that they pierce through enemies. They're just flying through the enemies and hurting multiple enemies. You could have them confuse enemies. I could set it to this where it's actually returning magic back to me as I use it. So if you want your primary attack to give you more magic for your other attacks, it's a good idea. Because these primary attacks don't use any of your magic power. So if I were spamming them on the ground, that blue globe in the bottom left corner, it's not going anywhere. I'm not using any magic power. But if I were to start holding R2, you see it go down pretty fast. So it's probably a good idea for you in the beginning, at least, to have a primary attack that returns that mana back to you, or whatever it's called for a particular character. I want to show you what a rift looks like. I can figure out where I'm going on the map. The map's kind of busy sometimes, and every time you go to a different area, all of this stuff will be in a different location, but you should be able to find it. Really, the only things you're not going to be seeing on the map when you're playing through the base game is the obelisk for the Nephilim rift and this cube thing. You won't see that purple circular thing for the artisan until about the end of the game, because you don't get the artisan until very close to the end of the game. But we'll go into a rift. To explain rifts a little better, it's just going to be a big dungeon with enemies, and you're going to need to kill a set number of enemies before a boss comes, basically, and you kill the boss. And there are two types of rifts. There are the normal ones, which is this one I'm sitting on here, and then there are greater rifts. These are timed. So here you just kill enemies at will, take as much time as you need to get the boss. Here, you're actually timed. The rewards end up being better, and no items drop until the end of the rift when you kill the boss. Here, items are going to drop off of everything, but here, you'll get a bunch of legendaries. Generally, if you're playing on the highest difficulty you can, you'll get legendary items when you kill the boss. You have to play these to get keystones to enter these. You can see it's saying I have 2 keystones available, so I could play 2 of these without having to come back and play a normal rift. Normal rifts, these normal Nephilim rifts, they're set at the exact difficulty you're on. These, they get higher and higher, harder and harder as you go along. And there are obviously 3 options. If you just want to keep increasing the difficulty for your rifts, you can just come to the highest achieved, and it will take you to the next difficulty. You could play at the last difficulty you played on, which for me was level 50. I've beaten a 73, but the last one I played was level 50. Or you can come down to the bottom and even select your difficulty. And if you go down far enough, you'll start to see the actual difficulty. So the last torment level begins at 45. Everything below it is torment 9, torment 8, and eventually you get down into just the base difficulties. We'll go into last played. Actually, I'll show you both. So we'll play a normal Nephilim Rift. It's pretty straightforward. You're going to be in a randomly generated dungeon, and you just want to kill everything you can. So I happen to get one of the dungeons that is going to consist of teddy bears and unicorns. This confused me for a very long time, because when I played through the normal game, I did not see teddy bears or unicorns anywhere. So obviously on the left side, it's showing that meter. I've killed 7% of the enemies I need to, and these little skulls drop on the ground. You want to pick those up in addition to killing enemies, because they increase your percentage of completion more than normal. Sorry. Yeah, I was very confused by the teddy bears and unicorns for a long time, because I didn't realize that there was a bonus area you could get to in the game on rare occasions called Whimsydale. You go through rainbows, and there are rainbow clouds and flowers that you have to fight, and a very interesting experience if you ever get the opportunity. Kind of hard to make out, but I'll attempt to show you if I come across another elite pack. Some enemies that you come across in the game, they have little yellow circles around the bottom of them while you're fighting them. Those are elites. They're much more difficult to kill. You can see on the map that there's a little orange star, and if you run up here, it's glowing orange line. That's a legendary item. Make sure you pick that up. So you'll notice a lot of things happen while you're playing the game. The enemies will put up walls. They can spit types of magic at you that make you run in directions you're not trying to go. They can freeze you in place. Lots of different things that can kill you. Some enemies will have bombs on the ground that can kill you in one hit. You want to make sure you are not standing in those when they go off. So there's another legendary item. Yeah. These sorts of dungeons in particular, you really have to watch the minimap to know where you're going, because they're so closed in. There's a chest. So nothing really dropped out of it. Some gold. Normally you would be picking everything up. Everything you come across. Even as a brand new level 70 character, you're probably going to want to pick everything up. There's one. Enemies right here that have these, well, had those little yellow lines under them. Those are elites. Normally they're a lot bigger and therefore easier to see. Now, I talked earlier about copying items. You can also send gold. So long as you're sending one particular stack of gold to someone, you can copy all of your gold to them. They can copy it back. You can do that with almost everything in the game, and it just makes the experience much easier to get through. These pylons you'll come across from time to time. You hit X to activate, and they'll give you bonus powers for a short time. On the higher difficulties, elites come out of them, so be careful. Don't get too used to the normal game where you just hit the button and you're given a bonus power. Later on in the game, you're actually going to have to fight for it. And this looks very easy because, like I said, this character is not what you would normally be playing with. These are all copied items from people a friend came across online. I don't particularly like playing with this character for that reason, but I'm trying to collect a bunch of legendary items for my other characters. So I will come in here sometimes and help level people, and there's no sense in... And I recommend playing through the game at least once with a friend or by yourself. The green items are obviously the set pieces. They're legendaries, but they're the ones that have the set bonuses. Yeah, play through the game with a friend or by yourself, but play without power leveling at all. Highly recommended that you experience that at least once. Something I should also mention is that you're playing on normal where you can die, but if you create a hardcore character, which is an option when you are making character, that character only has one life. So when they die, they die. You can't just load back in with that character. They're gone. All the levels you got with that character are gone, so you're going to have to play a lot more safely than you otherwise would. So you might be wondering why you would play the other rift versus this rift. It's because normally you're not guaranteed to get legendary items from these rifts, but during the greater rifts you would be. The end boss is going to give you some items worth having. You're also going to get a particular type of gem from the Greater Rifts that you don't get during these. The cool thing about playing the normal rifts, though, is, especially if you're playing on a really high difficulty, and I'm obviously getting a lot of legendary items, and during the Greater Rifts, when the boss comes, which is what's happening here, I hit 100%, so there's a boss over here, and it goes down very fast. That's not going to be the normal case for most players. Like I said, don't let what you're seeing fool you. But normally, if you were playing a Greater Rift, that's it. All of the enemies disappear. That's the end of the rift. You just go back and collect your stuff and you're done. But here, if you wanted to, you could keep killing enemies throughout the rest of the rift until you reach the end and potentially continue to get legendary items. I don't want to do that. I want to go back and show you the other type of rift. So the rift is still open because, like I said, you have to talk to Orc, get your gold and your experience. If for some reason the normal rifts have a countdown on them, the Greater Rifts just close and you can immediately go back in. These have a countdown. So we need to wait on it to close because otherwise we would just go back into that. Talk a little more about, okay, here's a good example of having a bunch of legendaries and a good reason to use the book. Let's see, in 5 seconds I can do what otherwise probably would have taken me a few minutes, and instead of scrolling through that wheel, if they have a star next to them, I know that they're a new item. So I can just scroll through my list and see what my new items are. Much simpler. And I'm going to mass salvage all of that stuff I picked up that I didn't need. Going to open a Greater Rift. Let's select level for this one. And before I open it, you'll notice on the bottom you can hit triangle to empower it. And if I do that, it adds electricity to everything, and it obviously tells me it's going to cost a certain amount of gold to empower this rift. And what it does, I think it increases the odds of you getting legendary items, but at the end of the rift you'll get to roll some bonuses, and normally you only get 3 of these bonuses, but if you empower it you get 4, which is just a time saver. So if you have a lot of gold, which you probably will if you use that copy function with a friend, like I said, it just makes sense to empower them every time you go into them. But let's go ahead and play a level 70, because why not? It's really not going to give me much in the way of variation today. Okay, see, I'm dead because I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing and just ran in there. This is a little more like the normal game. Your normal experience will be as a lot of moving around, watching for dangers. But another neat thing about the Greater Rifts is you will build your Paragon levels a lot faster. But you can see on the side there, this one is actually timed. So my percentage needs to follow that timeline as best as it can. If I can't complete the rift by the time I run out of time, well, then I'm shit out of luck. You'll also notice that while the enemies are dropping health globes and the bonus buffs, I'm not getting any items from them. So I'm not getting armor and weapons, gems. None of that stuff is dropping. Now if you come into a rift and you die a handful of times, I recommend going back to town. Like, find a safe area, transport back to town, and repair your items. And the reason for that is otherwise this is going to take you more time to complete because you're going to be weaker. I've only died once or twice, so I'm not too worried about it. And these will freak you out in the beginning. And obviously I'm starting to catch up and get past that timer, but in the beginning I really wasn't. Normally once you hit about 50% of your kills, that percentage is going to move a lot faster than the timer actually is. So unless you're playing an extremely difficult rift, you're probably going to beat the timer. Even if in the beginning you're trailing behind, odds are during the second half of the timer you're going to catch up. I think it's because you'll encounter more elites and they'll drop more of those percentage buffs on the ground that you pick up to move the timer ahead. And the only reason I'm making you sit through this is so that you can see what the end of these actually looks like. On portrait. Sweet. Yeah, those little glowing things that are blowing up on the ground, 9 times out of 10, those are going to kill you more than most anything. So here's a good example of why you might transport back to town. Because if you get trapped by a group of enemies that you can't kill, obviously it's not going to do you any good to just keep resurrecting and being less and less powerful every time. You might want to go back to town, make sure your items are as powerful as they can be. My stupid ass had to go running out there. Yeah, basically at the end of these rifts, you will obtain a gem that you can't just pick up. It's not going to be like a diamond or a topaz or anything like that. You'll get a gem that gives you a particular power that you can slot onto an item that you normally wouldn't have. And there will be a lady you can talk to that can level that gem to make it even more powerful than it is normally. And once you get those gems to, I think it's level 25, you get a secondary perk on them. And if you are empowering your rifts, you get a 4th roll instead of just 3. Yeah. Sometimes you'll encounter what am I trying to say? Hazards in the actual world that you're running through. So sometimes fire might be coming up out of the ground in places, or there will be axes swinging through areas that can kill you. Just watch for all of that stuff as best you can. There was some ice on the ground there. Again, I know it's pretty hard to see because of all that's going on screen. I almost immediately regretted loading in on this character. Every time you see me almost dying, the screen is flashing red, and I'm hitting L1 to use my health. Because I'll regain health over time, because my character is perked to, but it's a little slower than these enemies can deal damage to me. Some of them can kill me in one hit, and these fire things they're throwing around can kill me in one hit. So, using my health potions are pretty important. They do have a cooldown timer on them. I'll try to use all of my buttons at once. You can see the little circles spinning on the bottom left around them. If you see the little orange circle spinning around it, it means I can't use it again until it's done. And it will flash as soon as, like, square is about to finish up down there. It flashed, so I could use my square attack again if I needed to. Which I did. So now it's spinning again. As for loadouts, I'll probably do a separate video on loadouts for any given character, because I'm still figuring a lot of that out, and I know what I want for certain characters, but I don't have everything that I want for certain characters. This is really the only character that is pretty much as powerful as anyone knows how to make it. I've changed some of the perks that were recommended to me just because I found them to be more fun. But I'll go over those in a different video. What I really recommend is just reading over everything. There are so many options for every single character. Everyone has different powers, and it can all be a lot of fun to mess around with. Just see what you enjoy best. Once I'm done here, I'm going to attempt to remember to show you Paragon points, how you use your Paragon points. And if I ever do a character outfitting video, then I would go over that there as well. Because everything makes a difference. How you use your Paragon points, what magic powers you use, it's all based on the gear that you have equipped. These little purple things on the ground, those will kill you really fast too, so beware of those. Anyway, we're almost done here. And I hope that I've given you a basic understanding of what this game is going to be like. So now I'm pretty far ahead of the timer, and I've died a bunch of times. So I'm going to go ahead and... I could have resurrected in town, which is probably what I should have done, but find a safe area, hit right on the D-pad, and you're back in town. The good thing about this is you can automatically come back through this bubble and be where you were, so you don't have to run back through the entire rift. But repair my items so I'm as powerful as I need to be again. This area is really bad, by the way, because where it resurrects you is right by Tyrael, and so most of the time you'll end up talking to him when you mean to go through this rift. Just make sure it's showing X above where you're trying to get back to. Yeah, and this build in particular, I have a bunch of little fetishes, little creatures running around with me that do most all of the damage for me. They'll run out in front and attack the enemies so that I'm not having to do most of this. I spam X and my R2 attack for the most part. And I really recommend finding a button layout that you can be familiar with and comfortable with. So if you know that anytime you push X, for instance, it's going to not use your magic power or maybe even return some of your mana back to you, go ahead and do that. That's what I particularly prefer, is X being my primary and R2 being my most powerful attack. So I haven't seen items drop throughout the entire rift until we killed the Guardian, and then I got a bunch of stuff. As soon as all that's gone, I can talk to the Artisan. And what she is showing is any gems that I've picked up from the ends of these rifts And I can scroll down for a second. You can see that each one of them has different perks. The active perk is the orange thing that you're seeing, and the thing below it in white, it says in red at the end that it requires rank 25. That means you'll have to level this gem to level 25 before you get that other perk. And you can use these in weapons. Like I think I have the Gem of Ease. You can see it on the right side in that carving knife at the top. It's going to be, well, I can talk to her and show you because I've got a handful of them at the bottom. Yeah, level 150, which I'm pretty sure is the max. You'll see that when you're leveling these things, by the way, you find which one you want, whichever one you want to level, and just hit X and it will roll. But you see on the right side underneath it, it shows an upgrade chance of 100%. And you'll probably continue to see upgrade chance of 100% until you hit level 22 or 23 on the item, and then it will slowly start to go down. But I have begun leveling the Enforcer. I'm trying to get certain things to level 25 so that I have both perks. And some of my friends are leveling these other gems so that I don't have to. I started leveling some of them before we began this exchange thing. But let's just level this. You can see that I empowered the Rift because the chances where it would normally say 3, it says 3 plus 1. So I get 4 rolls. And it'll tell me my upgrade succeeded. It's now a rank 4. I'll roll it again. It'll be a rank 5. And then 6 and 7. And then she'll go away. You also notice that that number down at the bottom was increasing that entire time. So the effect gets stronger as you level the weapon. So the more levels you put into it, it gets more powerful. And that's why people would level something to 150 instead of just level 25. Because every time you do it, it's becoming more and more powerful. So we go back over here, talk to this person, done with that. And the final thing I'll show you are the Paragon points as soon as I identify my items. Because I want to get that in your head. You don't have to go through one by one and do that. Just go to that book, come over, mass salvage things, and look through your items. Paragon points. I got some Paragon points. And you can see there are 4 sections. I'm moving that thing around on the left. And it shows you at the bottom of the right how many points I can use on each side. So I've used a bunch already. I'm obviously putting points into Vitality at this point. I'll just go ahead and spin those. Back up.
I cannot afford that.
And obviously if you try to put points in more than you have, I'll say you can't afford that. And you may be confused at this point, but my character is not a female. I'm just wearing a mask that has female shape to it. So you'll be able to see some of these. Well, let's go back up top. Maybe, yeah, it's a dude. I just put a female mask on it because it's the mask that I like best. My character does not stick to the gender norms. Go me, progressive, right? Thanks for watching the video. I hope you learned something. If I didn't cover anything or you have any questions, leave something in the comments, and I'll be sure and make a follow-up video if there are enough of those that I need to address. Until next time, thanks for watching.